What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. If you are going to be buying or selling a house soon, you want to make sure that you understand a very important document in the entire transaction, and that's called the purchase and sale agreement. The purchase and sale agreement has all of the details for your transaction, and I'm going to jump into those details and we will do a deep dive so you know exactly what all is included here in this video. My name is Stephen Kodabash, and I'm a realtor located in the northern Atlanta area, and I get to help people buy and sell houses every day. What is this thing called a purchase and sale agreement? You might see it abbreviated as P&S. It's the same thing, but it's the primary contract or the agreement that is put together between the buyer and seller when the buyer is agreeing that, hey, we will pay a certain amount of money for this home under these terms, and then the seller as well is in agreement, and the two parties come together, and that's the contract that the entire transaction is based off of. You might hear someone say, hey, we are under contract. So what that means is once this purchase and sale agreement has been signed off on by all parties, then it is under contract. Once you are under contract and everyone has agreed, then the purchase and sale agreement is called binding. So it is a binding contract. But what all is included? Let's take a look at some of those details. First and foremost, the purchase price of the property is included. Duh, that's a huge one, right? So the purchase price of the property is clearly defined in this contract, so the buyers and sellers agree upon this price, so there are no surprises or anything like that down the road. Hey, before we go further, do me a favor and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. You're so awesome. Have you guys heard of earnest money? There's this thing called earnest money that's also detailed in the purchase and sale agreement. When the buyer is agreeing to purchase a property, they put up a certain amount of money as earnest money. And it shows that, hey, we are interested in this home and we are serious about purchasing it. So here is our earnest money that they put, I'll call it, you put it on the line. So you put the earnest money up in good faith, showing that I'm going to proceed forward and I'm going to eventually close on this property. The earnest money can go toward your closing costs or a down payment at the end of the transaction. So it's not as if it's something that you put up and then if you go forward with the transaction and close that you lose. That's not the case at all. But that earnest money is clearly defined as well in the contract, so in the purchase and sale agreement. So not only is the amount of earnest money detailed, but there's also a time frame in there that says, hey, look, you as a buyer, you've got to get your earnest money in by, sometimes it's a couple of days after the binding agreement is signed, maybe 3-4 days, something like that. But those details are also included. There are also contingencies that you can find in the purchase and sale agreement. One contingency might be that the buyer is saying, look, I've got a due diligence time frame that's also detailed in the contract. I've got a due diligence time frame and I want to bring in a home inspector to inspect the property. Let's say that there is a big issue that's found in the home during this due diligence time frame. Then the buyer goes to the seller and says, hey, look, we found this big issue. Here it is detailed in the home inspection report. I'd like you to take care of it. And all that is negotiated. Well, let's say, for example, the seller says, hey, look, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to fix it. I don't want to pay you any money to have it fixed. I'm just not going to touch it. So at that point, the buyer, per the purchase and sale agreement, the buyer has all the right in the world to back out of the contract because they had the contingency built in that they would have a satisfactory home inspection. And if not, the buyer can back out and they get their earnest money back that we talked about earlier. Another big item in this purchase and sale agreement is closing costs. Closing costs are typically handled by the buyer, but sometimes, depending on market conditions, the seller, as an enticement to go under contract on their home, the seller can agree that they will pay a portion of the closing costs. So in that purchase and sale agreement, you'll see a field that says seller paid closing costs, and that is another item that can be negotiated up front before everyone signs the purchase and sale agreement. So how about this one? How about the closing date? I mean, holy cow, that's why we're all doing this, right? We're going under contract on a home and we're going to actually close in an attorney's office one day. So what's that closing date? That date is specified in the purchase and sale agreement. And once again, that's another item that can be up for negotiation. But once that closing date is set, everyone knows that we've got a date that we're all working toward. So time is of the essence, right, in the real estate world. So there are lots of things that have to happen between binding contract date and then the closing date. But at least everyone has that closing date on the calendar, so we're all moving toward one goal together. So let me share with you something that's not covered in a purchase and sale agreement. You might be thinking about those details around closing costs, right? You might be thinking, how much are the closing costs? What are the items that I'm going to be paying for? Well, that itemized list comes to you later in the transaction. There's something called a closing disclosure that you will get a few days before closing. So those details around closing costs, what you have to pay for, how much, all of that will be detailed for you later. So that's not included in the purchase and sale agreement. How binding is this purchase and sale agreement? Keep in mind, this is a legal contract. So once the buyer and seller all sign off and everyone is in agreement, it's a legally binding contract. So say, for example, something happens and one party decides that they want to back out and they are backing out of the contract outside of any contingencies or guidelines in the purchase and sale agreement, then they could be liable for a suit against them. So it's a very serious deal because this contract is something that's followed by both parties in order to work toward that closing date. So once you're under contract, make sure that you understand all the terms, ways that you can get out, ways you cannot get out, so that way there are no surprises down the road, and then you might find yourself trying to get out of the contract, but you legally can't. And if you do, then you could lose earnest money. The other party could technically sue you. So it's a serious deal, so make sure you understand all those details. Hey, before you hop off my channel, do me a favor. Take a look at this video that I've published where I talk about your home's value. What impacts the value of your home? That's a very important question, right? If you're looking to sell your home, you want to have an idea of market value and the amount of equity you have in your home. I go through some information in this video that will help you out so you can understand what could impact your home's value. In a real estate transaction, I understand there are lots of documents, right? You probably feel like you signed 100 documents or read through 100 different pages of documents. I know there's a lot to it, but just keep in mind that purchase and sale agreement, that one is very important because all the facts and figures and dates of a transaction are all detailed there. So make sure that you read through that carefully and understand what everything means. If you're getting ready to buy or sell, I hope this video helped you out. I hope it helped you to understand better about the purchase and sale agreement and what all is included, and then how it could impact your transaction. If you have any questions on anything, reach out to me, comment below. I'll be happy to help. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video.